Hi there, this is Danny Flex and welcome to the latest edition of Seconds Out Flexpectations. We're here every Thursday, 4:30 PM to talk about boxing action over the weekend. And my colleague John Houston, in a video that went live yesterday, has focused very much on the main event of Fight Camp Part 3 of this year's edition between Joshua Buatsi and Richard Bolotniks. Just to add my tuppence worth, I think Buatsi gets a late stoppage in that one. I think style-wise, Bolotniks should suit him pretty well, especially under Virgil Hunter. But that's all I'm going to say about it because John's covered it very well in his own video. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the undercard and taking a bit of a different angle for Flexpectations, in that I want to focus on two A-side fighters in particular and just kind of compare and contrast the different routes they've made to where they are so far, and ask you guys who you think is more likely out of the two to win a world title. And the fighters I'm referring to are welterweight Michael McKinson and super featherweight Joe Cordina. Both unbeaten, both relatively young in their career. Cordina's 29, I think McKinson's 27. And taken very different routes so far to get where they are. Cordina is 12-0, former British and Commonwealth champion at lightweight before moving down to the super featherweight division. He's had 2 fights there so far. But he's come from a decorated amateur background. He's won a Commonwealth Games bronze medal, European gold, represented GB at the 2016 Olympics. So came with all the tools and all the amateur pedigree, and didn't stay in his native Wales when he decided to turn over and find a trainer. He decided to move down to Essex, at least for training camps, and stable himself with Tony Sims, a very well respected trainer and obviously the owner and manager of the Matchroom Elite Boxing Gym, so only trains fighters from the Matchroom stable. Has a very good relationship with Eddie Hearn, of course, as someone who's been on the channel many times. Now, Cordina deserves credit for uprooting himself and leaving his young family behind for the duration of training camps to come train in Essex. And he's kind of, I don't want to paint it as too stark a contrast, but he has had a certain number of advantages. He's built his craft as a pro predominantly on big shows, as you would expect for a decorated GB Olympian, particularly one trained at the Matchroom gym. And he looked very good at lightweight on certain occasions, it has to be said. He beat Sean Dodd for the Commonwealth title, beat Gavin Gwynn, who we know how tough he is, beat him for the British, and had some good wins. I think blasted out Andy Townend at one point, which was a particularly impressive win. Style-wise, I think that one suited Cordina. And then they felt that he had enough kind of capacity to make £130 rather than 135, and he'd have a better chance of succeeding there. Maybe get a few more stoppages, make his punch power have as much impact as his dazzling skills. It hasn't quite worked out that way yet. He's had 2 fights, 130, most recently against Farouk Kurbanov, who pushed him a lot harder than was expected. Former European title challenger, so certainly no mug. But it was quite tough for Cordina in there at times. He was against an opponent who didn't respect his power, I think it's fair to say, who crowded him at times and who was not afraid to let his own shots go. I think it was a majority decision on the cards in the end, and for me, there was no doubt that Cordina won the fight. But it was just a struggle, a bit of a struggle, and I don't know how much of that's to do with the weight, but he certainly so far hasn't looked the same fighter who was, on occasion, scintillating to watch at 135. Now, Kurbanov has, the person he challenged for the European title is still the champion in Samir Ziani, who we saw memorably in a Fight of the Year contender not too long ago against Alex Dilmagani. Short, 5'6", I think he is, southpaw, rugged, great work rate, Frenchman, and just a really good test, I feel, for Cordina, who's already won British and Commonwealth at lightweight. Could easily go for that European title against Ziani at super feather. I'm sure it's a fight that Eddie Hearn could make fairly comfortably if Cordina gets past his opponent on the weekend. I think he's 10-3 American. You'd favour him to win that, but yeah, I think that's the logical next fight for Cordina. Test him against a tough, rugged opponent at European level, but one who lacks his skill and his ability. and then we can see quite how far he can go. And then we have Michael McKinson, who, although he's the younger man out of the two, has had 8 more pro fights, turned pro about 3 years earlier. So he's 20-0 now, and on that path, he's been the away fighter on a lot of shows. He hasn't had much handed to him. He didn't have a glittering amateur background. He's not got a particularly fashionable trainer in his dad, Michael Ballingall, who's a boxing stalwart from down there in Portsmouth. Really good, obviously. Trains his other son, Lucas Ballingall, as well, and the brothers live together, which has got to help when you're in training camp and you haven't got to worry about the other person not dieting and not staying disciplined. You can kind of encourage each other. But back to McKinson, he's punctured 4 unbeaten records already in that 20-0 slate, and he's often been the underdog going into those fights as well. You know, it's only in recent last couple of years that he's built this kind of danger man tag. Not danger man as in a huge puncher, although I think he hits a lot harder than his record suggests. He's knocked a lot of his opponents down, even if he hasn't necessarily won inside schedule. But a danger man as in he can make you look bad. He's got really good skills, great counter puncher, movement and footwork are excellent, accurate. And he can easily upset the apple cart against guys who may have looked better than him, easier on the eye against substandard opposition, but he is incredibly effective. Last time out in March, we saw him beat Chris Congo, the 4th of those unbeaten fighters. He got past. Really good win on that night, dropped Congo early and never quite let him get back into the contest. You know, he's an awkward box of tricks on the best of nights, but if you allow McKinson to build up a lead, then it's near impossible, or it has been so far as a pro certainly, to peg him back. He gets Przemysław Ranowski on the weekend, someone we've seen in the UK before. In fact, the only trip previously outside Poland in his professional tenure has been here a few years ago when he lost to Josh Kelly. I think he was dropped 2 or 3 times, but did well to get up and last the distance over 10 rounds against Kelly. I mean, not a massive puncher at 147, but certainly a respectable hitter. So Ranowski showed toughness, and he was very game, and he kept trying, but Kelly was just a bit too much for him all round. And I think it'll be the same with McKinson, you know, just a bit too much talent, ability, movement, just a bit of everything, really. I'm not going to predict a McKinson stoppage because although, as I've said, he hits harder than his record suggests, looking at that record, it'd be crazy to predict a stoppage over someone who's never been stopped. But it wouldn't shock me if he was able to get him out of there. But that's the kind of next stage in his development. But I'd like to see him move quicker. You know, if European title's not an option just yet, I'm not sure what the situation is there. Obviously, David Avanesian is the champion. We saw him beat Kelly not too long ago. He might look at McKinson as a kind of who needs him type of fight, which you would understand, depending on how good the money is that Matchroom could put up. But I think it'd be good to get someone over for McKinson, kind of a fringe American or something like that, veteran, but on the fringes of the world rankings or at the lower end of the top 15s for the governing bodies. Get someone like that over for McKinson. He's got a very high WBO ranking already in his own right because of some of the belts he's picked up. But it'd just be good to get him in with someone who can, you know, test him, really got some old school tricks of their own and can really push him, and just to see if his style, which has proved incredibly problematic for opponents at domestic level, can transcend beyond and really have an impact in the global sphere. But I just find it really interesting because they've had such different backgrounds. You know, McKinson's only recently signed to Matchroom. He's often praised MTK Global for the work they've done with him. Only recently signed to Matchroom. Cordina's been with them throughout his career. Always pretty much the A side, I think, Cordina, whereas McKinson, as I've said, has been the away fighter a number of times. Different trainer choices. One's training under his dad. One's travelled away from where he lives to train under someone considered one of the best trainers in the country. And now you look at where they are now, both still unbeaten on the same card. But who gets to the top quicker? Or in fact, who gets to the top? Do either of them make it to world level / winning a world title? And if so, who would your money be on? McKinson or Cordina? I'd like to know what you guys think and why. So let me know in the comments below and I'll respond to some of them. But meanwhile, yeah, tune in Saturday night on DAZN. I'm sure I will be certainly tuning in. It'll be a good main event, entertaining, I think, while it lasts. I do favour Buatsi quite heavily, but I'll enjoy watching it. I think Cash Farouk's on the undercard as well. I always enjoy watching Cash Farouk. His upper body movement, his shot selection, the way he switches from head to body. He's a joy to watch. And I think kind of a sleeper hit could be the transatlantic duel between Reece Belotti and America's Raymond Ford. I think Ford's a favourite, and rightly so, but I think I think Belotti's really up for it, and I think it'll be an excellent contest to watch, particularly for the purist. So make sure you tune into that. I'll be back on Monday for reflections, 4:30 p.m, and following Thursday, same time for the next Flexpectations. As always, really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you all soon.